Right, morning guys. Welcome
Morning,
to
Abusa.
welcome to the
Yeah,
session.
loud enough for your video.
Welcome to the session. I'm going to be covering directives. If you've been in previous sessions, we've dived a little bit into directives. So today we're going to go into how you actually create a directive, and obviously just explore a few more. I might do an impromptu one just to show you guys like how it works, like if you're interested in it. Alright, cool. So what is a directive? If you can work. Right, so a directive is a bundle of JS and HTML. So what this means is that it uses and manipulates the HTML using JS. You'd normally use it to add just a little bit of dynamic functionality to your components that you'd use, maybe for validating, maybe input, or maybe for a ton of stuff. I've used Directive for like a ton of stuff. I think last time I used it for AngularJS, I was creating a scheduler. So I had a bunch of fun with that. So okay, let's dive into it. Okay. So you guys can join along if you brought a laptop. So maybe I already built an app here. And as you can see, there's like a few directives that are here. So I'll just name a few. So there's structural directives, and then there's attribute directives, right? So structural directives are one that manipulate the DOM, which means they can remove and add HTML to your DOM. And so normally you would see they would have a star here, so just like this ngIf here. So if this condition maybe is true, which means it will result to false, this means this won't appear. And for ng4, this will cycle through a collection, say an array here, and then if there are any of if this is empty, then this won't show. So, and if there are, it'll cycle through all of these and add them to the DOM. Alright, cool. Let's go to our. So here, this is how it looks. Mind you, this is not really the most efficient way of doing it, but it's how I've chosen for me to actually be able to demonstrate a few directives for you guys. So let's run this. Alright, cool. So I've built an application to toggle odd numbers, right? So if I do this, this is very basic. I'm pretty sure you guys can do this by now. So basically, it's coming in here and toggling this variable from our HTML, which we assign the opposite value of what's current, and then that's how it gets to toggle. And so obviously when you come here, if it's only if only odd is true, so it'll show these, right, this list here. And obviously if it's not, it will show the other list. Right, cool. So now there's a couple of directives that I want us to dive into, right? Alright, cool. So I've told you about the structural directives, right? And then you'll have attribute directives. I'm pretty sure you guys might have used them maybe when dealing with AngularJS. There's ng class and ng style, and then there's ng model, and there's actually quite a bunch. But for now, we'll just dive into ng class and ng style. So here, what I'd like to happen is I'd like it to color it differently if it's odd numbers. So if we come here, there's already a class here name odd, so we'll use that class. So we'll use ng class. So we'll say ng class, and then we obviously bind to this directive. And then we say in here you'll have your object in here, which will resolve your odd class. So if I say odd true here, should they're red now. Can you guys see this? Okay, so obviously we want this to be styled dynamically. So we wanted to say if this number odd, so if odd is divisible by 2, that's that modulo sign there, and is equal to 0, so obviously if there's no remainder, it will be 0, and then yeah. And then we'll do the same for the other guys. So it's red for odd numbers. Damn it. Oh, sorry. obviously here we don't want it to be red. So it's red for these guys and not for these guys. Alright, cool. So we can also use ng style. So we can bind to ng style and bind to properties that style has, like under its classes. So if we say ng style then in this object here, maybe we'll want to make our background blue, or maybe light blue. And then here, I don't know if I've shown you guys, you can actually bind to the style directly by going style dot whatever class you wanna bind to. But for now, we'll use it like this. So we background. Sorry? Yeah.
How do you think that cursor? The cursor in the way of the world. No, background. See, it's still on the background.
You are in our
Switching.
like background. You see it?
I can see that. But like, how do you see that when the cursor is on the word?
I explained.
Never mind. See, now I can see it. You know why? Because the cursor is on the word.
So we want to display blue if it's we want to display blue if it's odd, and if it's not odd, maybe yellow or something. So I think we'll just take that and we put it in here, and then snap, I forget this. What is it called again? But it's some sort of conditional operator. It's what? Sorry? Ternary, yes. So we will use this, and then we'll say here maybe light blue, and then here we'll maybe say yellow. I don't think there's a light yellow. That's fine. Yeah. Okay, so obviously we need to copy paste this to alright, let's run this. Alright. Alright, cool. So basically and another thing that you could do is I just want to know where this ends. Okay. So another thing that you could do, you could use the switch case, right? So basically you can have like a div here. just say ng switch, and then it'll switch on a value that you put in here. Right. And then obviously over here you'd have to have that value. Say this value is 5. We'll say the value of 5. Come back here. And then now, obviously, we'll put in the conditions of if it's this, and then you put this. So we'll put all our cases in here. So we'll say div. Div, and then we'll say ng switch case, and then we'll say so it's 5, and then we'll just say I'll come to it just now. Yeah. So maybe we'll say this is. Damn it. Maybe we'll say this is 10. Maybe this is 15. So, obviously, our directive that we're trying to add here is going to change the DOM, right? So, it can't be a attribute directive just like this is. So, we'd have to put a star here to actually tell Angular that this is going to change, because if the value is not 5 or it's not 10, it will remove it from the DOM, and we'll have to put a star here to signal that it's a structural directive. So if you come over here, let's say 5, the switch case. So if we change this to 10, it'll be 10. So obviously, if it's not what we specified, say 20, it won't show anything. So we need to provide a default for it. Let's quickly come here. We'll just say and then say at switch default, and then we'll do that, and then or something. So this is obviously another structural directive. Cool. So right now, let's just dive into how we create a directive. It's a similar command to creating a component. So just like we did like the first session. So what you do is you'd say ng generate component and then the name of that component, and then it'll generate it and put it in the folder with the boilerplate files that'll be present there. So we'll do the same thing. So we'll say here ng generates shortcut is G, directive, say D here, and then we'll say symbol directive. Symbol highlight directive. So what I want us to do is I want us to create a directive that would obviously highlight a piece of text. So let's just say that here. Cool. So there you go. We have our directive here. Let's dive in and see. See, this is what I was afraid of. That's fine. So over here, if we look here, we have a selector, right? So there's a difference between how okay, so first you'd notice that we have a decorator here, just like we'd have for our component. So if we come in our component, we have our decorator here, and it'll have selector and template URL and style URL. Here we don't have a template URL. We don't have a styles URL or a template for that matter. We don't need one because a directive's purpose is to transform the HTML that you have in your in your component or in your present HTML and into a desirable dynamic functionality that you want to apply there. So all right, cool. So this is our selector. So if we want to use our directive, would have to use it like that. So for now, if we come here and say let's put a private tag here, and then paste the directive here and say this is okay. So if we do this, nothing will happen, obviously, because we haven't done anything. That's not running, sorry. So nothing will happen for now, because we haven't really told our director to do anything. So actually, while it's running, it's going to be fast enough. Oh, cool. Do we all know dependency injection? I'm going to assume we all do. So that's our private tag there. So Angular does some dependency injection of our own. You don't really have to set up the DI. You can inject your libraries or your services in the constructor, and you can do that like this. So here we have you'd have your element ref, which is where the directive's sitting on. So here you can just say private what can we name this? Our element. So our element of type element ref. Why is it not? Okay, that's fine. There you go. So it's got added there. So we're referencing it from Angular Core. And then, so we want to use our element upon the ng init cycle. So on init, so on initialization of our application, we want to be able to access this element. So we can do here, you're going to say this implements on init. There you go, that guy. And then let's say ng on, there you go. And then yeah, so now we can start using our element here. You can just say this element dot native element dot say style. Background. This is a very bad way of doing it. We're just going to do it just to illustrate how you can access this element here. I'm going to show you a much better way. Actually, I don't think this might work. There you go. Yeah. So you can't do that, but this is a very bad way of doing it. So a better way is to use the renderer. Angular 6 has Ivy. Very impressive stuff that they're doing there. I think I might have touched on it when I was covering my first session. So Ivy is this new compiler they're releasing with Angular 6. But enough about that. So so what you should do is you should use the renderer, which will deal with the with manipulating the DOM better than what you would do. Like, even though we using Angular to manipulate the DOM, we might confuse it when we're doing it this way. So the renderer is in a better position of editing it for us. So if you come here, we say private. So I think it's called the renderer 2. So we just say renderer of type renderer 2. Yeah, that guy. So tuck that guy away. And we just say renderer dot set style so you say I don't know if you guys can see those overload parameters in there. So it's telling you it needs the element ref, it needs the style, and obviously the value. So let's put our element in there, and then we'll say background here, or background color. and then we'll specify the value, which is say 2. And then yeah, you don't have to worry about flags for now. Flags is important or whatever. You guys have seen this in CSS, right? Alright, cool. Alright. So if we come here, A. So we'll say, oh, sorry guys. I'm supposed to specify native element here. Boom. Color's bad, but yeah. Right, cool. So this is fine, but this is static, and we want something that's dynamic, right? So what we want to do is we want to be able to specify the color. So, or maybe first, let's bind to some of the events that are on this element. So we could use host binding and host listening, right? So host binding is to bind to the properties. Host listening is obviously to bind to the event. So we could say host alright, cool. So we'll start with host binding. So we could just say at host binding. Alright, cool. Did the right thing there. And then we could just say what we want to bind to. So we want to bind to the style, specifically to the background. And then we just want to say background color. This will be of type string. Right. And then instead of this, we can just say so this property background color equals, say, light blue this time. Alright, let's come through here. Alright, you guys see that? Cool. So now we want to bind to a event for highlighting. So we'll just bind to mouse over and mouse leave type of stuff. So we'll just say we'll host listener, and then in here you'll specify which event you want to bind to. So I want to bind to mouse over, and here this will be the mouse over, and yeah, this should so just this here. And then we'll pass in our event here. So this will be our event data. And then we'll pass in the event, which is of type event. And then we'll say, so it'll be blue. And then we'll do the same thing for when it goes away. So it's mouse over, I think it's mouse leave. And then the alias that you give it here doesn't really matter. And then we'll bring it back. So if we go here, it should be dynamic enough to highlight. Also, what we want to do is we want to be able to specify the type of color that we want to highlight with, right? So how we can do this is we can come up here and define our color. So just like we learned some components, so we define our inputs like this. Add input. And then we'll specify that this is how we'll do our highlight color. And then it'll be of type string. That's all. Hasn't imported. Yeah, cool. So, but it's not doing anything now. We need to say upon highlighting this guy. I think we just say this dot highlight color, and then in our HTML, so in HTML, go in here and then we'll say that guy. Let's bind to that. And we'll say maybe this will be green. How? I was trying to make it highlight as what you call this, as green, but now I misread one of these. So yeah, that's doing the right thing. Obviously there's a bug there because I initialize it as light blue, so we'll fix that now. Alright, cool. So we will also be able to define the default color, right? So you can just come here just say default color. And then, so instead of that, it will just be this default color. And then upon leaving, it should be the default color as well. So let's bounce to this default color. So we do the same thing here. Record, so we'll just say default. Default color, and then we'll say this will be light blue. Right, so default color is that blue, however, it's a green. Right, cool. But now you might have noticed that here for switch case, it's bounded into a square bracket, but my directive isn't. So what gives? So as you can see here in our selector, we've already done that. So when we write this to our HTML, it already has done that binding for us. And also, you might have noticed that, say for ngIf or ngStyle, we assign the name of the directive directly. We assign the name of the directive a value. But here, we seem to be binding to other inputs, right? Right. So what we could do is we could pick our pick. So we could make one of these the default. So say, okay, I'm going to choose highlight color. So instead of this, it'll be green, and in order for us to make this work, we have to say the alias for highlight color is the same as the name of the directive, right? So in this way, you might think, oh, but that's confusing, but Angular is smart enough to know that this could be both declared as the directive and also used as an alias for our variable here, our input variable here. What did I do? Okay, cool. So this should work. Yeah. So alternatively, what you could do, you can do that. And then it still works. That's it. Yeah, that's that concludes our lessons for today. Yeah, I think next week I'll be covering services and HTTP and stuff. I don't know if it's idle pipes, but yeah. So if there's something you guys want me to cover in one of these sessions, just let me know. But yeah, that's it.